Hi everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. Today we're going to be building the new from Takom, the 1/35th scale German Maus, or an English mouse. This was an absolute monster tank that they developed at the end of the war, weighed 188 tons. Now, two prototypes actually were built, one with a turret, one without, and they kind of did a conglomeration of the two from the parts they were able to get a hold of. And there's actually one of these still on display in a Kubinka, the Russian museum. I was looking at pictures earlier on YouTube, and it's just an absolute beast of a vehicle. Just incredible looking. Now, this is a brand new kit that just came out for them, so it's all brand new tooling. And we're going to go ahead and take a little bit look at the sprues first before we start building, just to kind of show you the basics on it. So let's get started on it. The first part we're going to look at is the hull, and it's kind of a bathtub style hull based on the shape of it. This had just such a huge area for all the wheels because of the weight of this vehicle. Just going to be absolutely massive on that, so they didn't have much of a hull inside here. Most of it sat on top of the sponsons. Now I'll also show you, and these are the side plates, so you can see how massive. Now I have the E100 in the background to kind of give it a little size of scale, so it's roughly the same size but with much thicker armor, making it the 188 tons. This was the external fuel tank, the massive turret. And you may remember too, Dragon did a while back, they did their copy of the E100, and what they did on it, since there was no actual turret ever built for this vehicle in real life, what Dragon did was actually just put the German Maus on turret on top of it. So that actually is something that we could do later on down the road if they thought that's what the overall turret was going to look like. And the other quick thing I'm going to show you is, this is a thing that's a little bit scary for me, but I think we can get through it. These are all the track pieces. Now they're individual working tracks, and there's 3 track links to make up to make them actually work together. So there's going to be a lot of cutting and sanding because there's a lot of connection points on each one of these tracks. So what I probably will do is off camera start working on these for the next couple of days to get through those, so I can kind of come and just show you how the construction goes together and how they work. And because of the shape of the vehicle, I might even cheat a little bit and not continue and make the entire top run of tracks, just because they're never ever going to be seen. They're completely sealed behind armor. Here's a little builder's tip as we start to assemble the tracks. There are 12 connection points on this main pad of the tracks, and if you clip the middle of each one of those 3 pieces, it'll actually snap all 3 at once and save you quite a bit of time cutting out all of these track pieces. Now, I looked at the other pieces of track on the vehicle, and unfortunately they have a different setup, so you have 8 to 10 different connection points that you need to cut off. Okay, what I thought I'd show you real fast is just the basic assembly and how the track goes together. So we're going to start off with our big piece, our padded piece, and then we're going to apply on both sides the 2 pieces that have the track pin in it as well. And those will just pop into place, and you can drop that in there. And then the middle pad piece has the opposite side that you can drop that in after we obviously put the glue on. And that'll lock both sides of these into place and make it workable. Now, you have to be very careful, as you can see with this piece right here, with the part with the pins. It's very fragile and very easy to break just cutting it off the sprue, because there's 8 connection points per piece of track just for this piece that you have to cut off. So just keep in mind, just go very slowly. Now this is probably repairable, that we can probably put a little glue on it, but it's just a pain that if you keep breaking them. And then once you get it all set up, the tracks will work, as you can see right here. So building these tracks is going to be a little time consuming. There is only one injection pin mark that I can see that's on the middle of the secondary piece of track, the one that has the pin in it. But it's dead center in the middle, and there's going to be 2 road wheels on that, plus an outer set of road wheels here as well. So you'll never see it, so I'm not even going to bother taking care of those. The one thing, oops, sorry about that, you have to keep an eye on is as you build it, always remember you have to always put the second piece with the track pin on it. So as you drop that other piece in there, you have something to lock onto the next one. So it's taking me quite a bit of time to start getting them all sanded. So I'm going to start putting all these together, and we'll come back and show you what the tracks look like once they're done. Okay, I went and assembled one of the suspension arms to kind of show it how it went together, see how it went together before I showed you guys. And there is a lot of parts to put together just one suspension arm. It is kind of difficult, I'll even point out, getting some of the parts to line up properly. They have made the ability to have some flexibility and slightly work. I'm not really into that. I'm going to actually glue all that down. I will keep the wheels being able to spin, but still quite a bit. And once you get all these 22 parts together, keep in mind too, there are 12 of those pieces. So when you look at the instructions, the instruction books on this kit is very small, because 90% of it is doing the tracks and the suspension arms, it seems like. So what I'll kind of do right now is I'll kind of show you since you've seen one of them already together, I will show you one of them go together kind of quickly, and then how it plugs into the side of the chassis. Now this last part I'm just going to show you going together at regular speed, because this is actually the most difficult part I found, is you have to get this little pin, which is a nightmare to try to hold on to just in itself, to drop into this little hole and then lock up on the other side. So not having third hand, so once you get this side kind of pushed in, put a little glue on that in there to make sure that's going to stay. And then you can go around to the other side and get this portion to lock in as well. And this is why the suspension working, like I said, I don't understand why you'd want it to work anyway. The thing would barely move at all. And then get that side locked in. The fun part comes in is when you get to go put this side in and trying to get to the back of the other piece without these wheels in the way. So here we are. Here's the second one completed, and make sure that you have this is where the little spring, the coil spring, would be underneath this, that they're on the opposite sides. One of the ones I did a little while ago, I put it where I had both coil springs on both sides of this bar right here, which is incorrect. So after you get all those pieces glued on, what my builder tip would be is to go ahead and put some glue like on the bottom of the coil spring. Get everything so it kind of just levels out, and then let it dry that way. That way you're going to get a nice level suspension. You don't have to worry about parts moving or breaking on you later on. Okay, I'm going to begin the construction on the hull first. And they want you to put these brackets in that are going to help hold up the upper part of the hull. Now they are specific, so unfortunately I cut them off the first time and didn't measure them up, but it's pretty easy to figure out which one goes where because of the way it fits into the bottom. But after that gets all lined up, we can go ahead and start working on the lower suspension. I wanted to show you guys a little builder's tip to help you out to not mess up the road wheels like I did on one of them. If you start to assemble the road wheels, try not to look at just the bottom portion of the road wheel, because if you look at right here, it looks like, just like all the others, that it looks like it lines up perfectly the way the wheels line up. But you'll notice that the shocks both turn up on the same side of this cross arm. And when you put that part on, and when you look at it from the side, you're going to be able to see that. What needs to be done is they need to be put in across from each other. So when you look at the up above, the shocks, you'll see one on either corner. So when you look at the side of the vehicle, you're going to see what's supposed to be sticking out correctly on the outer road wheel. Unfortunately, I messed up one of them. I didn't even notice it because it looks the same, like I said, on the bottom. I was able to take it apart and fix it, but if not, it would just look weird on the side. Okay, here we are. We've assembled the one half of the side skirt as well as the suspension. And I did that kind of as a test to see how everything fit together. And I'll kind of walk you through the process. First of all, the wheel pattern is exactly the same on both sides of the vehicle. Normally on some of these tanks you'd see like the opposite, where this outer road wheel would be sticking out over here, but it's the exact same pattern. Now, the way I did it is I kind of fitted this into place, at least to show you on the other side, and they're tight enough to fit in there for right now that I wouldn't go ahead and start gluing any of that down, because this outer piece has to bolt into the outer piece of the side skirt, this big thick piece. Now you have to attach all these other pieces as well before you go forward on it, but I'll kind of give you just a general idea how this is going to work. So you get all of, and I have to do a little bit more cleanup on those, so I'm not going to glue them in yet. But once all that would get glued in, you'd go ahead and put your drive sprocket as well as your return idler in there, and then you'll be able to fit this piece into the side and just one by one work them into the right spot, then apply the glue from the top. This way you'll get a nice flat surface. Everything will line up properly, because you don't want any of these to glue in place first and not get them perfectly, because you'll never get this outer side skirt to glue on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to finish cleaning up the bottom here, all the sanding and things, and then I'll glue the bottom piece in and come back and show you what it looks like. So what I've done is I've started assembling everything stacked kind of this way. I did end up putting just a touch of glue just now on in there, just to keep them kind of secure. And then start stacking everything up. As you can see, all this goes on. Whoops. And we want to keep all of those parts moving as well, so we don't have problems with the tracks later on. So you just start lining up, starting from the front, and then start clicking each one of these and then eventually it all just kind of clicks. Now before we apply the glue, we want to make sure on the inside that all of this parts have lined up, and there's a lot of little witness marks that they want to line up nicely so the fit will fit good. And with that in place, we can start applying our liquid cement down the inside of this to start getting it to set up, and then I will flip it and start adding the glue on the inside of that as well. Okay, as you saw me just do, I glued the side panel into place, and luckily before I let it completely set up, I looked a little bit ahead on the instructions, and this is kind of a little bit, I think, of a little bit of a flaw in the instructions and how this goes together. To get this front tab to go, front plate of the tank to go on, there's some little tabs on it on both sides that have a little corresponding side over here. If you've glued these permanently into place, like it shows in the instructions, you're not going to be able to get this inside here. The little tab just doesn't fit in there. So I went back and I held this one open a little bit just while the glue dried, so it didn't bond to it. Now it's kind of a multi-step thing, because you want to get this piece, into place, and because it has these little tabs on it, which correspond to this side. Now this is the fun part right here, because I did a little test fitting just before I started filming, and it is a little bit difficult to get all these things to flex just right. So push this side in on over here, and then pulling this piece out, hopefully we can get all the, yeah, there we go. All the pieces are going to snap into place here. Now we'll obviously go ahead and glue it. And it fits real well. It's just that the way the instructions are showing it would make it really, if that had dried completely, I don't know how I would have got that on without cutting out all the tabs on it, which would have made it a little less secure fitting into place here. So now that I've got that situated in here, I'm going to go down the line and add our glue to it and get it to all be nice and sturdy before we move forward with any other parts. almost forgot too. The back panel is the exactly same way as the front. It has two little tabs on it. Now this is a little bit easier to flex into place because you don't have two surfaces trying to bend. It's just one solid surface. So I was able to, because these had both had solidified back here, just snap that into place, and we'll go ahead and glue that in as well. So just keep all that in mind as you're going forward. When you start to attach these sides, get ready to have the entire top and back and front panels fit into place at the same time. So I've started gluing on the top parts of the hull. One other thing too I should point out to you too, it's necessary to put the photo etch parts on before you attach the upper plate. They are glued on from underneath. For some reason I just looked at it quickly and thought the photo etch grills would go up on top, but that was another little mistake I made on it there. All these little auxiliary parts are going together fine. I've started working on the fuel tank that'll go on the back here, sanding that out. Okay, now we can start working on the turret. And one other quick thing I'll point out to you too is, it's funny, the little coaxial 75mm that comes with the kit that I just cut off the sprue, this has been slide molded, so it's all hollowed out. This is one thing I was a little disappointed in the kit, that the main 128mm barrel is not. It's actually a two-part barrel with a seam down the middle, which, as most of you know, this is kind of a pain to get rid of that seam. And especially in today's age that, you know, doing slide molding, this can easily been slide molded, as well as, or just include an aluminum barrel. It's such a basic shape. More than likely, if I can get a hold of one, I'll probably change it out. I am going to go through the effort to try to get rid of the seam. I just put the initial coat of liquid cement on there, so we're going to let that dry. We've let that little molten plastic come out, and we'll see if we can get rid of the seam completely. The inside of the turret is going to be pretty basic. It's just the couple of pieces in here to hold the back of the barrel. Not much detail at all inside. Anyone expected on this because you can't see inside of it all. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to start putting these pieces together, work on the barrel a little bit more, and come back and show you what it looks like. So I've just glued those little parts with the back of the breech in, as you can see, and then it's just as simple as popping this piece into here. Now the nice thing is too, there's no parts that attach into this barrel, or this turret, from the underneath side, so you can glue these two halves together immediately and not have to, everything else is just going to get glued onto the top. So the reason I show you this right here, even though there's not much building to it, I wanted to just show you the overall size of this vehicle, just how massive it's going to be. And we've got our E100 here in the back, so it's, slide that up a little bit, it's about an equal size, just a lot bulkier than the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and start gluing all the parts onto the top of the turret and keep working on the barrel. Well, here we are. Here is our completed build part of the model. Once we got the suspension and the tracks all built together, didn't have any other problems going to get with anything else. Everything was pretty straightforward. There were a few little areas that I thought it necessary to put just a little bit of putty in, just to get it so it's nice and smooth. Just small areas, nothing major. And the tracks, I was going to plan to do a complete run of tracks and try to get them around there. So I started building them. They don't mention in the instructions though how many pieces make a complete set. So I started just playing around, but I had a really difficult time trying to get them down in here because of the return rollers that are up on top of the model kit. So if you're going to be doing it that way, with a full set, you might want to consider leaving the return rollers off the top of the wheel sets, and that's just so they slide much easier back down there. So what I've done is I've gotten to a point where I have enough track to do the wraparound and enough that you won't see the inside. So we'll paint these separately, and we're going to go ahead and start painting the vehicle now as well. So we're all ready to paint now. We've got our airbrush set up with the NATO black inside, XF69. And now we're going to paint the entire model with a coat of NATO black, including the tracks. I've decided to do this in a three-tone kind of squiggly pattern, and now that we've got the green completed, we're going to go ahead and use our NATO brown, the XF68, to go and do some squiggles all over it as well. Then after all this is set up and dried, we're going to clear coat the entire model with Tamiya's TS80 to seal in all of our paint job. So we've got the paint job all sealed in now. I'm just applying a few decals, just some basic stuff on it, and we're using a little bit of our Tamiya Mark Fit underneath. Just applying the decal into place. Now, according to the instructions, this is the camouflage pattern as it would appeared in the last days of World War II. They have some other kind of cool looking patterns as well, but they take place in 1946 as if type stuff. Since they did actually make a couple of these tanks, one of the version 1 and one of the version 2. Version 1 has no turret at all. It was just like a giant box up on there for testing purposes. So after we let this dry for a little bit more, we'll put a little bit more of the Mark Fit on top, and then just using a Q-tip we'll burnish it down just to make sure the decal sticks very well. And I also plan on putting some number decals on here too, trying to get them out of the water as we talk. Yeah. So we'll put the number right here. So we'll let those dry for a little while. We'll come back and actually straighten them too. Come back and show you what they look like. Okay, we've sealed the entire model now, and I'm just using some of the Tamiya panel liner to kind of go over some of the rivet heads, bolts, all the weld seams, things like that, just to make them pop out a little bit more, because there'd be a great area to collect dirt and grime. Now we're not going to go ahead and do too much weathering on this vehicle. Blend a little bit of that in right there so it's not so heavy. And you just use a brush dipped in a little bit of mineral spirits. That takes off most of the excess. Now I'm going to go over the entire vehicle right now with that and come back and I'll show you the next step. And we're also going to put some of the streaking grime on the whole vehicle. So that process is just putting a little thinner down first, getting the area nice and wet. And then just taking a little bit of it. Gonna pick a couple little areas to get some streaking in it. Now, and then once you get that going there, what you can do is just take your wet brush again and just kind of blend it in to make the streaks that much more subtle. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and start working over the whole vehicle with that. We're not going to do a ton of weathering on this vehicle because it was supposed to be fairly in good condition, brand new if it would ever seen combat. So I'm going to go ahead and finish all that and come back and show you what it looks like. And I also thought I would go ahead and put a little dust and dirt on the tracks, and just real easily, just taking our bigger brush and taking a little bit of the Tamiya panel liner, putting a little bit of that on there, and then follow it up quickly by Vallejo's Light Sienna. And I'm just going to kind of dirty up the tracks. Now it is going to dry much lighter than this and kind of have a chalky type color or effect to it, you know, dry dirt in between all the tracks. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that up. We'll put a little bit on the bottom of the tracks all the way down around with the road wheels as well. Well, here we go. Here's our completed model. And did a couple other quick things I'll just kind of point out to you before we go any further. I did go back here and put some fuel stains on the fuel filler cap area around the back, as well as after everything was all dried and set up, I went and sprayed the entire model with XF57 buff, just a light little mist coat. I really like doing that on these vehicles. It kind of gives a dust coat to it that looks like the thing's been outside and has not a super dirty effect to it, but just enough to subdue all the colors and make it look like, you know, some dust and stuff is blown onto it. Really adds a nice effect, and it only takes like, you know, 15-20 seconds to do completely. It also will mute down the tracks as well. Now the kit itself looks, I think, really nice once it's built. The tracks and suspension, wow, they were a lot of work. In fact, that was probably about 80% of this build was just working on the tracks and suspension, as you saw me do earlier. The couple of things, I kind of wish that they would have included some rubber band tracks inside, but the type that are actually glued together. For the amount of track that you can see on this, that was like 2 days worth of track work on there, just cleaning up and gluing them all together. It seems like a lot of work for not being able to be seen at all. And the same thing goes with the suspension. The suspension underneath there is great, and it's, you know, but so much of it is not seen, and that was multiple days of work just on that too. In fact, the first 3 steps are tracks and suspension and just the body, and that was the majority of the build. It was, I would say, it was a good 80% of the build. After that is really kind of just a hull. There's no interior on the turret. And the other thing I kind of wish they would have done too is would have included a metal barrel for something so basic and simple as that, or at least slide molded it. All those things aside, like I said, it was a lot of work, but I'm glad now that it's done, that we have a copy of this to go with our other vehicles. This is probably not the greatest model for someone who's just starting out because of all the construction work on the tracks and the suspension arms. I'd probably wait until you've built a couple other kits before you try tackling something like that. You might just get a little too frustrated with it. But like I said, it does look great once it's built up. It is just a beast of a tank. At 188 tons, it was just a monster. And you can imagine that thing staring you down. Staring you down like that. That's kind of give you a lower angle on it now too, so you can kind of see, especially since I took almost a week working on all the lower areas down here, kind of see what they turned out like. So I thought lastly I would just show you a side-by-side comparison of the 3 tanks, the E100s, and then of course the mouse in the middle. Quite some massive pieces of armor right there. So I want to thank you as always for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel. That way you'll never miss a new one. You'll always get a little notification when a new video comes out. And thanks again, and we'll have more videos coming soon.